On the podcast today, we are going to speak about chapter 73 of the Tao Te Ching, which makes up the 73rd episode of the 81 meditations on the Tao Te Ching. And as usual, Guang will read Jia Fu Feng and Jane English's translation, and I will read Derek Lin's translation.
A brave and passionate person will kill or be killed. A brave and calm person will always preserve life. Of these two, which is good and which is harmful? Some things are not favored by heaven. Who knows why? Even the wise are unsure of this. The Tao of heaven does not strive and yet it overcomes. It does not speak and yet is answered. It does not ask, yet all its needs are met. It seems to have no aim and yet its purpose is fulfilled. Heaven's net is cast wide. Though its meshes are coarse, nothing slips through.
The bold in daring will be killed. The bold in not daring will survive. Of these two, one may benefit, the other may harm. The one hated by heaven, who knows the reason? Even the sages still find this difficult. The Tao of heaven does not contend and yet excels in winning, does not speak and yet excels in responding, is not summoned and yet comes on its own, is unhurried and yet excels in planning. The heavenly net is vast, loose, and yet does not let anything slip through. In this chapter, Lao Tzu is talking about two types of individuals, the courageous, resolute, and calm individual, and the daredevil, the risk taker. And he also speaks about how one of these is congruent with the Tao, aligns with the Tao, and the other doesn't. And also, he speaks to a type of mystery surrounding that type of effect.
Yes, somehow the heavens will like to favor one over the other. And why that is, here in this chapter says that the wise, the sages don't even know why, right? Yes, in this translation, it says a brave and the passionate person. He translated as a passionate. So passion often it has a positive and negative meaning, right? But often if we are too passionate towards something, that means we are overly attached by something. So we emotionally react to it, that outcome is being very overly passionate, right? So therefore, never things go well when you're overly passionate. That means overly emotional. So you react emotionally, whether that's a good emotion or bad emotion. I think when you react emotionally in whichever circumstance, I think it's more often than not you might spoil the situation.
That's right. That makes me think of the three gunas in Sanatana Dharma, where you have tamas, rajas, sattva, where if we're talking about passionate and brave or calm here, first of all, the passionate person would be rajasic, would have a lot of that passionate energy, active energy within them, which kind of keeps them from aligning with the Tao because of that over-attachment to its own subjective conditioning or what it thinks of that the world is, right? And so it attaches to maybe people, maybe types of ideologies, even your car, let's say. Whereas the other one, the calm and resolute person, is more sattvic, sattva. They have more of that pure energy, more calm, and can stay strong in the midst of battle, right? And they will not be easily pushed around by the winds of change and time and so forth and so on. And so they're not affected by the world at all, and they have that pure energy and are not attached to things, people. And I like what you said about emotions, because when we read through the Tao Te Ching, there's a big emphasis on that the Tao acts and moves without emotions. It's beyond our puny intellect, right? We cannot understand what the Tao fundamentally is. We can give analogies, we can write metaphors, we can understand by aligning with it, but we can't understand what it is in its totality. But we have to know that it's beyond emotion. Nature doesn't care about our emotions, right? And so that's why sometimes bad things happen to good people, right? Where people will question, why did it happen to this person? It's like, well, we don't really know. Like, we can only assume that the Tao is doing what it needs to be done. And our understanding is at such a low level compared to the totality of the universe.
Yeah, we often trying to make sense of everything, right? We're trying to make sense of why that happened, and why my life turned into this way or that way and like that. And that is, beyond our comprehension. And emotion is something can be very beautiful for us as human beings, right? So we give a meaning into certain things, and we feel very resonating, and it has a profound meaning to us, and we feel good about it, right? And that is a kind of appreciation towards what we have and towards our life, and it can be beautiful nature or something like that, right? It gives us a meaning to live, and makes life more meaningful and purposeful. But in this case, Lao Tzu is pointing out when that emotion can go too far over the line, then he actually mentioned in the first line, the brave and passionate person will kill or be killed, right? So it's quite a exaggerated expression, I think, but that's how much he emphasized that we need to be, like, sometimes be cautious about our own emotion. We need to be in check with our own emotional response.
That's right. And the daredevil, or the one who is overly passionate, can be consumed by emotions, right? And hence they're emotional because of what you said before, their attachments. And so they can kill or be killed and do it with complete abandon. You know, they don't, I guess, some of those individuals don't value their life so highly, so they will fight for a certain cause. But Lao Tzu's like, you know, why would you want to die prematurely based on something you're attached to, right? And so when we talk about emotions, Lao Tzu is saying, like, as you were saying, like, he's not saying that emotions aren't beautiful, and it is kind of a glue of relationships in society, and emotions can be a positive thing, but tend not to be a lot of the time. But he's trying to explain to us in this chapter that no matter what our human emotions are, the natural forces of the Tao don't care about our likes or dislikes. Could care less, right? And so this is why in China there was the ancient ritual of the straw dogs, right? Where the straw dog in a ritual was used and just cast away in the ritual as if it was nothing, as a symbol for how our life is kind of cast away by nature and the Tao, as if it was nothing, right? As if it was nothing that was so important. Now, you don't want to take this in a pessimistic way. Lao Tzu is saying this is actually positive because it takes the focus off yourself, and it explains that humans actually aren't special, right? We assume we are special, but in the grand scheme of things, we're not special. And the sooner we come to that realization, the better. And then we won't be consumed by our emotions. We won't be consumed by our attachments. And we'll be able to live in harmony with nature, with each other, with the Tao. And that's imperative for us to understand, is what Lao Tzu is saying.
Yeah, that is coming from the Taoist perspective, isn't it? You've seen the bigger picture. You don't take everything too seriously. You don't take your own existence as something very seriously or significant, right? If you have a bigger picture, if you have the bigger perspective, see the world, then you can come to that sort of realization that your kind of petty emotions actually don't really matter. Right? With the problem with the emotion is like we have this negativity biased attitude, right? That we often get triggered by negative emotion over positive emotion. That's often what spoils a lot of things in our life, right? And in this chapter mentions that calm person, that not daring, not taking the risk, and rather being cautious and more prepared and more calm-mannered people. And in that, being calm is also taking a lot of inner strength as well. I think that you need to be able to have that inner strength that holds you firmly, right? So not to react emotionally. So that means also that you kind of somewhat trusting the process, trusting that you are in a place where you're supposed to be, kind of thing, so that you don't act emotionally, like impulsive respond to it, so that you stay calm. And you need to be somewhat have a courage to be that way, right? So you don't react and spoil the situation.
And Lao Tzu say in this chapter that he doesn't know why, but some people have that inequality and some people don't. Now, can someone cultivate that inequality? I'm sure. But some people are born with that and some people aren't. And hence the one who is passionate, the daredevil, are always out seeking external validation, seeking the next achievement or so forth and so on. But one who is calm and resolute have that inequality and can just find strength in that. They don't need external validation. They don't need to climb Mount Everest. They're good where they are. They're perfectly happy where they are. And so they don't need that. And so Lao Tzu is saying that, as you were saying, the sages don't really know why that is, but that's the way it is. I mean, it's as, the moon is the moon and the sun is the sun. You can debate all day why one isn't the other, but that's just a fact of the matter. So some people have that inequality and some people don't. And as I said, I think that there should be a focus on obviously cultivating that in someone whose probably natural disposition is rajasic, right? If you look at the three gunas in Sanatana and Dharma, someone who is rajasic or say tamasic, who is inert and lazy and this and that, part of the system is to cultivate more sattva, cultivate more purity, more calm, more presence. And so that's just nature. You can get all angry about why some people have that inequality and why some don't, but that's the way nature is. Again, nature doesn't care about our petty emotions or our petty likes or dislikes. It will just cast us away as another straw dog. And so that's what we have to kind of come back to and kind of get over ourselves a little bit. And when we we think too highly of ourselves as humans, right?
Yes. I think that's pretty much the answer to this question, right? Why that's the heaven's way, why the nature and the Tao works that way.
Yeah.
And that is because that is how the way of nature is. It's very important that you mentioned the way of nature. The Tao doesn't really care about how we feel, right?
No.
And Tao has its own principle, and it just follows its own principle, right?
Yep.
Like you said, just there is sun and the moon, there is a river, there is mountains.
Yep.
We didn't create it. We couldn't even do it, right?
That's
So
right.
that's just the way of nature. And the way of nature is to do just what's supposed to be doing, not to care about emotions.
That's right.
And so the ones who follow by passion and emotion will spoil anything that you do. But the ones who follow by calmness and patience, then it'll just work out. Things will work out the way it's supposed to be. Why? Because that's how Tao operates, right?
That's
so
right.
you move, you are moving as Tao almost. Hence the heaven favors that than the other.
That's right. And that's why all throughout the Tao Te Ching, there's an emphasis on emulating the way of the Tao. And obviously the essential teaching for that is Wu Wei, is effortless action, intelligent spontaneity, non-doing, call it whatever you will, path of non-interference. So there's an emphasis on emulating the Tao. And so in this chapter, that's, as what we were saying, Lao Tzu is saying, if we follow that process of being calm, resolute, courageous, and so forth and so on, that's a surefire way to success. Maybe not the success that you think that you're going to achieve, but you will understand the process of your life by following that, and you'll say, "Oh, that's why I'm here," right? Like that's because I have emulated the Tao, and not everyone's success in air quotes is going to look the same, right? For some, it may look like Elon Musk. For others, it may look like a mother and a father who have raised 4 or 5 kids in a healthy household. It looks different in each circumstance, but there's an alignment with whatever that process is. And so we have to always remember in sort of like this idea of emulating the Tao is that we're serving its purpose, not ours, right? And so the one who is the passionate individual, the daredevil, the one who's a risk taker, often are serving their own ends and are not serving the ends of the Tao. And so when you understand that your life essentially is a beautiful thing, but in the grand scheme of things is not that great, then you'll understand that emulating Tao is very important, because you'll begin to serve its purpose. Now, why is it serving that purpose through you? That's only for the Tao to know. We can't understand that. But the way that you can understand it is when you feel very aligned with what you're doing, and feels like there's a grace in your life, like a divine grace that's moving through your life. You meet the right people, you have the right experiences, you go on beautiful journeys with people and this and that. That's where you feel this divine grace come into your life. And the other one who doesn't feel as though they're connected to it and they serve their own purpose and are consumed with emotions and attachment will never experience that, because you go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and there's a lack of contentment.
Yes, the risk takers often to be interfering with the nature, right? That's why I think things become more difficult, because you're kind of going against the order of life, order of nature. And whereas we know that Tao is a core characteristic of Tao is effortless, right? But if you're a risk taker and if you're an emotional person, there's often to be effortful, right? You need to force things to happen. And that in the end, that's somewhat interfering with life, interfering with your life almost. Whereas a calm person, the ones who are following the way of Tao, is because following the nature of effortless way. So, like you said, that is the divine grace, it's almost, right? So you just follow through its way, so let things just happen for you almost, and you just becoming like observer, not passive observer. It's more like alert observer who is following the Tao consciously, right? So that you follow effortlessly, so that your life pans out to be how it's supposed to be.
And this is why the surrender element in Taoism is very important, as we mentioned with grace and this and that. Like giving your life over to it, and wherever it takes you, it takes you. And you'll know in that surrender why your life has turned out in that way, right? Because you don't have to fight that process. You know, a lot of the time when we're trying to create our own life or a certain circumstance for ourselves, we have to fight so hard to gain that circumstance. We have to do this and that. And look, Lao Tzu's not saying that that's not necessary sometimes, right? Life is not just pull. There's a little bit of push and pull. Like, this is how existence is, right? It's not one or the other. And that's where people get it wrong, right? Obviously, complete surrender is important, but sometimes a little bit of action is necessary. He's not saying complete, like, non-action a lot of the time. He's saying, like, effortless action in the sense of the effortless doer, like get rid of the person and then allow the Tao to do its thing, right? And so you don't want to take that to its nth degree and say, I'm just going to surrender and do nothing. And Lao Tzu's saying that's actually not what I'm saying. But you do need to have that surrender principle as part of your system and understand that, because we all feel that when we surrender, right? We all feel that, particularly, like, for example, you and I, we're ardent travelers, right? So when you travel a lot, you have to constantly surrender to the experience. And if you travel in India all the time, if you don't surrender, then you're gonna get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. But it's a great lesson, right? A great lesson for everyone to harness that surrender. And nothing could be more beautiful than having that surrender, because once you do surrender to the Tao, that's when grace comes in. That's how you begin to actually emulate it, because you are operating from a real effortless perspective. And so then the grace comes into your life and you have all of these experiences and so forth and so on. And look, if shit does happen, when shit does happen to good people, we don't know why that is, but the Tao knows. And so we cannot understand its magnitude. And I think that that's also not to be taken negatively. I think it's a beautiful thing within life as well, because it keeps that mystery open. First of all, a lot of us assume we know what death is and so forth and so on. We don't really. We haven't walked through that door. Or we have walked through that door many lifetimes, but we're not cognizant of that in the present, right? And so I think that mystery is also beautiful, even though, of course, it's hard when you lose someone and they're a good person and the Tao has essentially discarded of them in such fashion. But if we can sort of have that higher objective perspective, we can see things from a deeper level. And often you can only see things from a deeper level when you have surrendered to the Tao and have given over your power and essentially to that ultimate principle.
That's right. Yeah, we're trying to make sense of things in life and why it happened to good people and why good things happen to bad people and this and that. Yeah, that happens a lot, but we could never know why, right? But yeah, I think it's a job for us is to how we go through that process. How we deal with those situations is our job to take care of, right? Why that happened is out of our hands, right? Completely out of our hands. Things go wrong and we become extremely stressful when we're trying to control that our things are completely out of our hands, right? Yeah. But yeah, in life, a job for us to do is that we just do our best that are things that are within our control, whether that's surrender or we actually need to take some sort of action, right? And when we do need to take some sort of action, then we need to be calm and not emotional. And yeah, so we need to trust that process in the end, right? And yeah, the letting go process is very important. Sometimes it's not easy because we think we can control everything, right? So letting go is sometimes not even necessary. But like you mentioned, traveling somewhere like India, always throw rocks in your picture, right?
Yeah.
Like throw something to you and to kind of wake you up a little bit, right? And it kind of becoming a great reminder that this life is not like your life per se, right? You are living its life almost, so that in those situations you need to learn to let go a lot of things. Sometimes it's not. Again, that is out of your control. You have to let go, otherwise that is the only option, right? So that's the great way to learn. Actually, that's a great lesson that we can take with us.
Yeah, the Tao is living your life. The Tao is your life, but we assume it's our life. Right? And so it's a beautiful thing, like you said, when you let go, when you surrender, you have that resoluteness in that surrender. And then from there, you have no doubt, right? And I think that's what this chapter is kind of teaching us in a roundabout way, is that we need to have no doubt in the process of the Tao. We maybe can doubt our own life on a personal level, but we can have no doubt in the process of the Tao and why certain things happen. As this chapter alludes to, sometimes what appears a bad situation on the surface, you only have to wait a certain amount of time for things to rewrite themselves, because that's the nature of the Tao, right? And that's why the calm and resolute and courageous person has that presence and patience, because they know that things will sort of iron out in the future. So guys, we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next time.